Hello, everyone. Welcome to Royal Black and Elite. I'm Lady TrenettWilson, your lecturer and social historian. I'm so glad that you all could join me today for today's lecture as we close out Black History Month. Now, I am in the belief that Black history goes all year long. It is a part of American culture and American history. But this month is set aside to really highlight some really powerful people throughout history. And I could not close the month without talking about Nelson and Winnie Mandela, because Nelson Mandela was actually released in February of 1990. So I thought it'd be a great lecture to have. So welcome, everyone. Thank you all for joining me. Y'all listen, don't forget to hit that like, share, and subscribe. And if you could, hit that hype button as well. It pushes it through the algorithm. And listen, if you all have not hit your notification button, definitely get the notification button, because if you don't, they don't notify you. So you see my video 2 or 3 days later, and I want you to be able to see it when it's released. So you'll know when everything is released. Now, if you know about Nelson Mandela, it would have been about the 80s. That's at least when I first started hearing about him and heard about this man in Africa who was in prison because he was fighting against racism. Now, in America, that would be the fighting against kind of like Jim Crow laws, but in Africa, it was called apartheid. Now, he joined a system that would fight against this apartheid. It was called the African National Congress. It's kind of like the Republicans and Democrats in America. This was his party there. And he joined it very early in life because, apartheid happened when he was young, so he had to fight against it. Now, he was born, he and Winnie were both born into royal lineage. He was born on July 18th, 1918, and Winnie was born on September the 26th, 1936. Now, Nelson became active again in politics at an early age, and he even founded the youth arm or the youth league for the African National Congress. Now, the ANC was a liberation movement, and they fought again against apartheid there in South Africa. Through nonviolence, Mandela led campaigns against this racist government. There was really two important ones, one in 1952. This was called the Defiance Campaign, and another one in 1955. And this was called the Congress of the People. As you can imagine, the apartheid government did not like it. They did not like Mandela fighting against them or the movement fighting against them, and he was arrested several times on sedition. Now, it was during this time that Mandela began to adopt the Marxist beliefs, and he even joined the South African Communist Party, which was banned there in South Africa. And a lot of times, again, we talked about this in some of the other videos. We saw people, Black people in particular, in Africa, and even some during the Civil Rights Movement, move to Marxist and communist belief because the current system was discriminating against them so badly that this system offered them another out, something, a community, wealth, housing, free food, things like that. So, but that was against the government there in Africa. But he was not charged, or well, let me say he was unsuccessfully charged and tried for treason in 1956. Mandela was married to his first wife, Evelyn, during this time. So can you imagine your husband getting arrested all the time? Truly, these women who stood with these men in Africa were the Coretta Scott Kings of their day, and so if we had a comparison to compare them to here in America, that's who these people were. Now, they divorced, however, in 1958 because they said, now this is alleged, that Mandela had a roaming eye. But not only that, he was never home. He was there fighting, going back and forth to jail. And so they did divorce in 1958, which oddly was the same year he and Winnie got married. So they got married in 1958, which allegedly may have confirmed that Roman eye. But they were married 38 years. So definitely this was the woman who spent the majority of her life and his life. They spent their life together. Mandela, when he married Winnie, he married the right one because she was by profession a social worker. and she picked up the fight for apartheid with him. So they worked, in ministry, if you will. It was a ministry for them together. But they weren't together very long because only 4 years later, Mandela was arrested again. Now, since he had began his political activism, he had always practiced non-violence. So his approach had always been to, march or to have speeches. But in 1961, he allegedly co-founded a militant group that led to sabotaging an apartheid campaign, evidently. So in 1962, he was sentenced to life in prison for this reason and for treason. Now, while in prison, the apartheid government picked up their attacks on Winnie. Allegedly, they tortured her, they exiled her, and they put her in solitary confinement. Now, can you imagine that she was a mother at that time of two children? She and Nelson had two children at that time. So, it was terrible. She was, in essence, an enemy of the state. Now, during this time, Winnie's security force was accused of hurting and kidnapping a 14-year-old. So she began to get kind of a bad reputation. And, when he was released in 1990, they was on rocky ground. So he was more of a peaceful man, and he wanted to talk it out at that time because he didn't want to go back to prison after spending all them years. That one little time he tried to, puff up. They put him in prison all those years. So he kind of wanted to be more of a diplomat, but not Winnie. Winnie wanted to be a radical. They did not see eye to eye. And only 2 years later, they were separated after he was let out of prison in 1990. And by 96, they were completely divorced. So it was rumored that Winnie had a man. So, who knows? But I can only imagine how hard it was. Now, Winnie never did remarry, but Nelson did. He did remarry in 1998. He was 80 years old. So again, they said he was very charming, very well spoken, a smart man, and he liked the women. So he even got married when he was 80. Again, Winnie did not get remarried, but she was a member of the parliament from 1994 to 2003. And then again in 2009, 2008 to 2018. She was also the Deputy Minister of Arts and Culture from 1994 to 1996. So she was Mandela's public face pretty much while he was in prison. In a twist, though, in 2003, Winnie was convicted of 435 counts of fraud and 25 counts of theft. She was sentenced to 5 years, but in 2004, the sentence was overturned. Unlike the legacy of Nelson Mandela, who passed on December the 13th, 2013, Winnie's legacy is a bit more complicated. But she passed on April the 2nd, 2018. So I just wanted to do this lecture on this great man and woman. No matter, what you thought about them, they made history as man and wife, and she stuck by him all those years that he was in prison. So I thank you for joining me for another great episode of Royal, Black, and Elite. Now, don't forget, hit like, share, and subscribe. Leave your comments below. Did you know all this about them? Did you know they had divorced, that he was married again? All of that? You all leave your comments. And I want to thank you for joining me for another great episode of Royal, Black, and Elite. Hit like, share, and subscribe.